my name is Maribel. I am Colombian. I enjoy a lot teaching in Spanish Con Salsa because I love the concept of using the music as a tool for learning a new language. I love languages. I have been teaching Spanish for almost 2 years, but I have been a constant student of languages since all my life. So I really enjoy languages, and I am so happy to be here with you and help you to improve your Spanish.
Gracias y bienvenida. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to join me on the podcast, because I know that you guys are very good at teaching and working with the students, and we always get great reviews. So anyone that's listening who's had a class with Jael or Maribel, then you already know. But if you haven't already, hopefully you get that opportunity when you sign up for Spanish Con Salsa, because everything's just more fun, especially when you're learning with music, right? To start out, I want to ask you both, because you have experience not just as language teachers, but also as language learners. And I think that to be an effective language teacher, having the experience of learning the language is so important, because you know what the students are going through. You understand the struggle, right? So I'll start with you, Jael. Can you tell me, what do you think is the hardest part about learning languages?
For me, for being honest, in English, I am always struggling with the grammar. So, because Spanish and English is very different, the grammar and the way of thinking, learning a new way of thinking, trying to figure it out. What is this person trying to say? Because it's not the way that I think, it's a different way. So for me, that part, the grammar, I struggle a lot with the grammar in English. I still learning English and trying to improve it. So yeah, that's for me.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think grammar, there's so much to it, and you really do have to think in that same pattern, right? So if you're speaking in a language where the words are in a different order, you almost have to think backwards in what you're used to, right? Because you're like, oh, that word usually comes first. And when you're thinking of, you've got to switch all that around. So yeah, that definitely, I think that's why a lot of people, when it comes to learning Spanish with the grammar, they start to slow down a lot when they're talking, because they're thinking in their head. You see them calculating, okay, which verb do I need to conjugate, right? And they're really struggling with that, because you do have to change the way you think. So I think that's a great point. And what about you, Maribel? What do you think for you, and what you've seen with some of your students as well, is one of the hardest parts of language learning?
For me, the hardest part, even in English, and I also learning French, is to be constant, because I start like so happy and with big enthusiasm, and I go, and after 1 week, and it's like, I don't want to keep studying, or I feel lazy. So being constant, and especially with French, find people to practice with, because I am in Colombia, so it's a little easier to find English speakers, but French speakers, not that easy. So sometimes the practice, it's a little harder to get, especially conversation. So I think, that might be the hardest part for me, like being constant and finding conversation practice.
It's interesting you mentioned conversation practice, because for me, it's one of the things that people say about Spanish as well. They say, oh, I really want to speak Spanish, but I just don't have anyone to talk to. And you talked about being in Medellin and not having a lot of people that speak French. But I wonder, with technology, we've all been living on Zoom, not by choice, right, for the past year or so. And so we've been in this world where we can connect with people virtually. We can connect through the internet. So do you think it makes it easier to find people to talk to, even in French that you're learning, or in Spanish, or any other language? Do you think that technology makes it easier to find those people to talk to, even if they're not in your city where you live?
Yeah, absolutely. I think thanks to internet and the new reality that we are having through this pandemic, we realize we can do everything online, anything. So having language exchange is also a possibility. It was before, but now it's more common. And then that's where I go back to being constant. For me, that's like the difficult part. Like make a routine, for example. Okay, I'm gonna set 1 hour every week for having a conversation exchange. So that's the tricky part. But I agree. And actually, I have seen some language exchange in some platforms. So it is possible. And it's easier, definitely, than before.
So, Jael, I want you to chime in. Do you think that consistency, like Maribel mentioned, is one of the important things to do when you're trying to learn a new language? Do you think that that's helped you become successful with learning English? And also, I know you teach sign language. So do you think consistency is also a habit that leads to success when you're learning a language?
Yeah, consistency. Because I have been learning English since 10 years maybe, or 12 years. All in Latin America, we all take English classes when we are in the high school at least, or sometimes in the elementary school. So I can say that I've been learning English my whole life. But there was a point that I didn't practice any English. And when I had again to speak with an English native speaker, I couldn't say any words. Like, where is the English that I've been learning the last 5 years? It was there somewhere in my brain, I know, but it needed to come back, right? So consistency. Since I started speaking English every day, like 10 years ago, my English went better and better and better and better. So for me, that's the main point of learning a language, the consistency. Trying to do it at least every day, a little bit. It doesn't need to be like 1 hour. It doesn't need to be like something that you have very scheduled, or I'm gonna do this grammar today and tomorrow this vocabulary. No, but at least if you have like 15 minutes every day or 10 minutes every day that you push yourself to speak that language that you are learning. I think for me, in my own experience, that's been like the key point for improving the English. That's my experience as a language learning. So I think it will be the same with the Spanish.
I like that you mentioned that it doesn't have to be, so big, right? When we think of learning a language, we treat it like a job, this serious matter. Okay, I have to find the perfect grammar textbook and I have to follow it to the letter and I have to do all the exercises. And instead of just saying, if I can just find 10 or 15 minutes today to interact with this language, then I'll be making progress. So I think, doing things in small bites, small pieces, really does make it easier for you to stay motivated and stay consistent. Because if you go 3 months without any, language that you're learning, then it's very hard to pick back up again. Versus if you just say, okay, I'll take 15 minutes, and then you're making small progress. But at the end of 3 months, you've made so much progress, right? Because 15 minutes times, 7 days a